Alexander Reed, one of the city's most feared and respected CEOs, rarely left the glass tower of Reed Industries for something as ordinary as walking his baby in the park. But today was different. His wife, Mia, was bedridden from a difficult recovery, and at only 11 months old, little Emma wouldn't stop crying unless taken outside. So there he was, Alexander Reed, a billionaire in a tailored suit, pushing a baby stroller through a modest neighborhood park that didn't even have a security gate. And then it happened. Emma suddenly giggled and stretched out her tiny hands excitedly toward someone sitting on a nearby bench, a frail-looking older woman in worn-out clothes, holding a cracked purse in her lap. Alexander frowned. His daughter rarely smiled at strangers, and she never reached out like that. The woman looked up, surprised. Her eyes were kind, though tired. She hesitated, but Emma leaned forward again with an excited squeal. Alexander sighed and stepped closer, trying to gently redirect the stroller. But the woman softly said, "You have a beautiful daughter." Alexander forced a polite nod and turned slightly away. He was used to random people recognizing him, begging for jobs, money, favors. Then Emma began babbling, desperately trying to get the woman's attention. It was the first time she had ever shown such eagerness towards someone she'd never met. Annoyed but intrigued, Alexander finally spoke. "Do you know us?" The woman looked down, her voice trembling.
No.
"But I knew someone you loved." Alexander froze. She took a deep breath, hands visibly shaking, and whispered, "I used to be your wife's nurse." The world seemed to stop. His grip on the stroller tightened. His pulse kicked up. Because Mia, his wife, had never mentioned a nurse who looked like this, or who ended up on a park bench with half-torn shoes and no coat in winter. Before he could say another word, the woman added, "She told me something I promised I would give only to you." Alexander's heart skipped. Emma gazed up at the woman with complete trust, like she already knew her. But Alexander didn't know whether to believe her, or fear what was coming next. "If you want, I can now continue with." Alexander was not a man easily rattled. He had negotiated mergers worth billions, stood in hostile boardrooms, and stared down corporate rivals without blinking. But this woman, this stranger sitting on a park bench, had him shaken in a way no CEO had ever managed. He sat beside her, leaving a polite distance, and spoke low. "My wife never mentioned you." The woman smiled sadly. She wouldn't. She wanted everyone to think she recovered alone. Strong. Untouchable. But she didn't want anyone to know what she was really facing. Alexander narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean, what she was facing?" The woman slowly reached into her old purse. For a moment Alexander tensed, instinctively shielding the stroller, until she pulled out something small and harmless. A sealed envelope. His blood ran cold. His wife's handwriting. "I promised her I would give you this," the woman whispered, "but only when the time was right." Alexander's voice turned sharp. "What time?" The woman swallowed hard. "When Emma was old enough to recognize me." Alexander stared. Emma recognized her?
But how could she?
His daughter was too young. Yet she was happily babbling toward the woman, as if greeting an old friend. It didn't make sense. He took the envelope with a firm, almost suspicious grip, then studied the woman again. "You worked in a private hospital, yes?" She nodded. "I was with your wife every day. I know everything she went through, things she hid from you, because she didn't want to be your burden." Alexander went rigid. "Mia hiding things from him?"
No.
"Impossible. They shared everything." The woman continued. "She was scared you'd blame yourself or worse, change how you saw her. She was proud. Too proud." A tremor of unease ran through him. "Why are you here now? Why are you on a park bench instead of working at a medical facility?" The woman looked away, eyes glistening. "Because I lost my job." "Why?" She hesitated, then whispered. "Because your wife begged me not to tell anyone the truth about her condition. I helped her keep that secret. And when the board found out I omitted medical files, I was dismissed." Alexander felt the ground tilt beneath him. She continued, voice trembling. I never regretted it because she told me that you loved her enough to protect her, even from the truth. Alexander clenched his jaw because suddenly he wasn't sure she was wrong. Hands shaking, he finally opened the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten letter. He read the first line, and the color drained from his face. His wife had been hiding a diagnosis that changed everything. She knew something none of them had prepared for. And now, Alexander finally understood why this stranger was sitting on a cold bench. His wife had trusted her with the biggest secret of their marriage. Tell me when you're ready for. The letter trembled in Alexander's hand as he read every heart-wrenching line. His wife's handwriting, soft, elegant, painfully familiar, felt like a ghost's voice speaking directly into his ear. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't hide it anymore. I was diagnosed long before Emma was born. I didn't want you to look at me with fear instead of love. Alexander's chest tightened. His vision blurred for a moment. He turned to the woman, her hands folded, waiting silently. What condition? His voice cracked. The nurse took a deep breath. A rare degenerative illness. The doctors said it would worsen after childbirth, and she knew it. Alexander felt something inside him collapse. His wife had carried this alone. Through pregnancy, through late nights, through quiet mornings holding Emma while hiding pain behind smiles. The nurse continued gently. She refused treatment that could have endangered the baby. She wanted Emma to have a chance at life more than she wanted her own. Alexander stared at his sleeping daughter, tiny fingers curled, cheeks soft and peaceful, and a tear finally slipped down his face. He swallowed hard. Why wouldn't she tell me? The nurse looked at him with a sad, knowing expression. Because she knew you, Mr. Reed. She knew the moment you found out, your world would stop. You'd drop everything, abandon your company, your ambitions, your future, and she didn't want that. His jaw tightened. She didn't get to make that decision for me. The woman nodded. She knew you'd say that too. Silence fell between them. The park seemed too calm for the storm roaring inside him. Birds sang. Cars hummed in the distance. Life moved on, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. He read further. If she's reading this letter with you, it means she kept her promise. Please take care of her. She sacrificed more than you'll ever know. And forgive me for hiding this from you. Alexander exhaled shakily. Forgive her? He didn't even know how to breathe right now. He lowered the letter and looked at the woman. How long do we have? How bad is it? The nurse's eyes softened with sympathy. It's progressing faster now. The doctors believe she may soon lose mobility than independence. Alexander's heart pounded.
No, not Mia.
Not the woman who once ran marathons, who danced with him in the kitchen at midnight, who smiled through every hardship like it was just another reason to be grateful. He stood abruptly. We're going to the house.
Now.
She needs treatment.
Specialists.
Whatever it takes. But the nurse didn't move. Mr. Reed, there's something else. Alexander stopped. The nurse looked at him with a painful truth sitting behind her eyes. Mia also made me promise one more thing. She didn't want you to see her decline. She wanted you to remember her strong. Alexander's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. And what do you think I should do? The nurse finally stood. I think she was wrong. No one fights alone. Not someone who loves as deeply as she did. Alexander stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, slow, determined. Because his wife might have chosen silence, but he was choosing war. He would find the best doctors, the best scientists, the best therapies, whatever the cost. As the nurse picked up her torn purse, Emma reached out again and touched her hand, smiling. And in that tiny gesture, Alexander realized his wife wasn't the only one who needed saving. Tell me when you're ready for. Alexander's car sped through the city, his jaw clenched, hands gripping the steering wheel. The nurse sat quietly in the passenger seat, holding Emma on her lap. The closer they drove to the mansion, the heavier the air became. The house was silent when he entered. Too silent. Mia was usually waiting in the living room, soft blanket over her legs, book in her lap, pretending nothing was wrong. But today, she wasn't there. Alexander headed straight to the bedroom. He pushed the door open and froze. Mia was sitting on the edge of the bed, struggling to button her shirt with trembling fingers. The movements were stiff, painful, and evidence she could no longer hide the truth. She looked up, and her face went pale the moment she saw the nurse behind him. "Alec," she whispered, voice already shaking. "You weren't supposed to." He walked forward slowly, the letter still in his hand. "Mia, how long?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Tears shimmered in her eyes. "Finally," she whispered. "Before Emma. Before everything." He shut his eyes briefly, trying to contain the storm inside him. "You carried this alone. You gave birth like this. You woke up every night smiling so I wouldn't notice." She looked down, ashamed. "I didn't want you to lose yourself. You worked your whole life to build something. I couldn't be the reason you burned it all down." He sat beside her, hurt, furious, heartbroken all at once. "You are my everything, Mia. The company? The success? None of it matters without you." Tears finally slipped down her cheeks. "But I've already started losing pieces of myself. I didn't want you watching me disappear." He reached out and lifted her trembling hands.
You don't get to decide that.
"Marriage isn't only for the days we're strong." She broke then, completely. She pressed her forehead to his chest and cried, shoulders shaking, body aching with years of suppressed fear. The nurse quietly stepped outside, giving them space. Alexander held his wife, stroking her hair, whispering, "You're not disappearing. And I'm not losing you. We fight. Together." But just when the moment seemed to soften, Mia stiffened. "Alec, there's something you don't know." He pulled back. "What?" She looked at him with terrified eyes. "The board already knows. They forced a vote this morning. If you step away to take care of me, you lose the company." He stared. The floor might as well have vanished beneath him. "They want you distracted, vulnerable. They know you won't be able to lead while I'm sick." Alexander's expression hardened, cold, deadly calm. "So they want a war." Mia reached for his hand desperately. "I don't want to be the reason you lose everything." He squeezed back. "You are not a reason. You are the reason I fight." But Mia wasn't done. Her next words shattered him further. "They've already arranged an emergency vote.
Tomorrow.
If you don't appear in person, they'll remove you permanently." Then she whispered the words she'd been trying to protect him from. "And I'm getting worse. I may not make it through the week without medical intervention." 2 impossible clocks began counting down. His wife's life on one side, his company and thousands of employees on the other. And he had to choose. "Before tomorrow. Tell me when you're ready for." Alexander barely slept that night. While Mia rested fitfully beside him, he sat in the dark, staring at the city skyline through the window of their penthouse, his empire glowing like a battlefield. 2 futures stood in front of him. If he went to the board meeting tomorrow, he could protect the company. But Mia could decline without the urgent medical intervention she needed. If he stayed with her, she would be safe, but he would lose Reed Industries forever. At 5:40 a.m., he made his decision. Not as a CEO. Not as a billionaire. As a husband. The boardroom war. The room fell silent when the elevator doors opened. Executives, shareholders, lawyers. Everyone stared as Alexander entered the boardroom not in a suit, but in casual clothes, looking exhausted and raw. The chairman smirked. "Mr. Reed, considering your absence from recent meetings, we assumed you wouldn't show. Shall we proceed to vote?" Alexander sat down slowly, calm, but only on the surface. "Before you do," he said softly, sliding the letter across the conference table, "you should know why I wasn't here." One of the board members glanced at the envelope. "We're aware your wife is ill, but the company must move forward." Alexander's jaw tightened. "She didn't tell me she was sick. Because she didn't want me to abandon the company. She believed you needed me." He scanned their faces. "But now I realize something." He leaned forward, voice low and steady. "A company that demands a man abandon his dying wife is not worth leading." Some of the board members shifted uncomfortably. The chairman scoffed. "Touching speech. Completely irrelevant.
We vote now.
All in favor of removing Alexander Reed as CEO. A voice cut him off. Excuse me. Everyone turned as the doors opened. The nurse stepped in. She wasn't in scrubs now. She wore a modest blouse and carried a sealed folder. I have medical testimony and legal documentation, she said, placing it on the table, regarding Mrs. Reed's treatment, signed by the hospital's ethics board. The chairman frowned. And this matters why? The nurse looked him dead in the eye. Because it proves Mrs. Reed's medical records were deliberately hidden to protect this company's stock value.
Gasps.
Faces went pale. The nurse continued. The board threatened to cut funding to the hospital if her condition was disclosed. They feared investors would panic. Alexander froze. Mia knew? The nurse nodded. She hid the truth not only from you, but from the world, because they told her it would cost thousands of jobs. The room erupted. Lawyers whispered. Shareholders argued. The chairman tried to regain control. This is outrageous. But the nurse wasn't done. She opened the folder and slid one more document forward, signed by multiple hospital administrators and an external investigator. A scandal, a cover-up, on record. The chairman's face drained of color. You release that, he hissed, and this company burns. Alexander stood. I'd rather rebuild something honest than lead something rotten. And then it happened. One by one, board members started turning. In light of this information, I vote to retain Alexander Reed as CEO. I second. I third. The chairman slammed his folder shut, but he was outnumbered. Alexander Reed remained CEO. But instead of celebrating, he walked out of the room without a word. He wasn't done. The real battle. He returned to Mia's hospital room, breathless, overwhelmed, and terrified. She lay weak, hooked to monitors, eyes fluttering open as he entered. You went to the meeting? He nodded. It didn't matter, because I came back. She tried to smile, but tears spilled instead. I didn't want you to sacrifice everything for me. Alexander took her face in his hands. I didn't sacrifice anything. I kept the company, and now I get to keep you too. The nurse entered moments later. We reviewed treatment options. We think we can slow the progression. It won't be easy, but there's hope. Mia closed her eyes, relief shaking through her. Alexander kissed her forehead. We fight. Together. No more secrets. Mia finally whispered the words she'd held for months. I was so scared you'd stop seeing me the way you used to. He smiled, a tired, emotional smile only she ever saw. I don't see a weak woman. I see the strongest person I've ever loved. The twist. Emma's gift. Emma crawled onto the bed, giggling, touching her mother's face. Mia smiled softly. She keeps reaching for the nurse. The nurse laughed gently. It's the perfume. I wore it the day she was born. I held her first when your doctors were stabilizing you. Mia's eyes widened. She remembers? Alexander looked at his daughter, bright-eyed, reaching, innocent. Maybe she did. Maybe babies remember love before memory begins. Final scene. Months later, photos filled the living room. Mia in therapy. Alexander attending every session. Emma holding her mother's hand while she learned to stand again. The board scandal was closed. Corrupt members removed. The hospital reinstated the nurse with honors. And one evening, as the family sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Mia whispered, I thought I was dying alone. Alexander leaned into her. You were never alone. You just hadn't turned around yet. Emma tugged their hands together, and the family finally healed.